Everybody for tuning in to Coder Conversations. If you want to catch up on any past episodes, visit us at www.coderconvos.com. I'm here with my co-host Brian.
This is Brian Russick, professional drummer, drum teacher based out of Suffolk County, Long Island, New York. You can find me on the web at brianrussick.com.
And for today's guest, we have Michael Leary, Fullstack developer and also a musician. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, a pleasure to have you on. If you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into full stack development? And then we can segue into your music.
Sure. So, bit of a unique story. In 2014, I was on the way home from a show. I was riding my bicycle in Brooklyn, New York, right outside the Barclays Center, and a taxi cab just decided it was my night. I was nowhere near him, but it was hit and run. And in the process of protecting myself, getting his information, blah, 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 I couldn't really keep working. I couldn't keep that job that I had at the time. I couldn't keep playing my instruments from the injuries that I sustained. So over the course of the next 4, 5, 6 years, I couldn't earn the same income. I had to find a way to provide for myself. And I was, I think I was just online regularly. I wasn't looking for anything specific. And I came across something that was from the Wonder Woman movie at the time, the first Wonder Woman movie. And Google had partnered with the movie to create a little game for young girls to be the coder superheroes of tomorrow. And it looked interesting to me. I checked out what it was. And once I kind of got under the hood of what was happening, I realized that it seemed to me that code operated on the same formal logic that I had studied in my philosophy degree at SUNY Binghamton. So I already knew what was happening. I felt like I kind of already had a secret there. And then when I found out that web development was this marriage of being creative, like my musical self had already been, where you bring something into existence that didn't exist before, and marrying that with the problem solving and puzzle logic of, the main parts of philosophy, I was very excited. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
So from there, I had nothing but free time because I was recovering from the physical injuries and I couldn't play my
That's really
instruments.
intense.
Yeah,
that's
so
really
I just
intense.
began to teach myself using a lot of the free resources that are out there now. And I know some of them are a little bit far away from free, like a Udemy, I think, is paid for. LinkedIn Learning, I think some of those you have to be paid for. Maybe your employer can provide them.
They're pretty cheap, though. Yeah.
Yes, but something like a freecodecamp.org, that was a huge one for me. Code Academy, Kevin and I were just talking about earlier. And I just kind of went through programmatically all of the little things, built everything off on the side because I wasn't in this time crunch where I would normally want to cut corners and see what the answers were. I was actually just taking the time to build everything, and I fell in love with it. And the same thing with music, or Kevin, Brian can both tell you when you fall in love with something that everything else just takes care of itself. You just end up done with it. So that was becoming So that was becoming a front end developer. I was just doing web development, and then in the role that I have now, I've learned a lot more about the back end, and I've been in this role for 2 years now, so I've kind of balanced out both sides of that.
Yeah, so something I noticed about you is that it seems like you kind of spread your skills. Like you get to a good at something, and then you go to something else. Like you don't just stick into one thing and just keep going at that. I think it's good to have a diverse skill set in this economy.
It is. I would love to say that it's this strategic thing to attack the economy or the state of things since COVID, or the job market, which I spent far too much time in after the big tech companies had all those layoffs, Microsoft, Netflix, Amazon, all like 10,000 people, 15,000 people.
Right.
And I got hit by that after I did finally get a tech job. I was on the job market for like 16 months. It was really bad. And you see so many stories that are worse than that. I didn't have a family to provide for. I didn't, I had at that point I had my health back. So, so I wish I could say it was some kind of strategic thing. It's been a natural part of myself. I've always loved languages, even back to Spanish in high school. I took so much Spanish, I didn't have to take any foreign languages in college. Coding is also languages. Music theory is also language. I'm in love with languages. So that pattern has kind of just taken me laterally and forward.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said about music theory, because I think there's a lot of overlap with music theory and programming. Wouldn't you say? Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed recently that a lot of the people on LinkedIn that I had kind of made these connections with as I was job hunting and trying to support other people that were job hunting, I kept seeing people that were in the coding space just coincidentally saying, like you both have in this conversation with me, "Oh, I'm also a musician.
Right.
My whole background is music." So I have actually since made a Discord server that is exclusively hosting people that are both in these dual existences of coders and musicians. If you guys want, I'll send you a link afterwards. You're welcome to join it. But yeah, we just share coding experiences, work on little projects together, and talk about music, share music. I have a very long commute to my job, so I was able to listen to an entire album that somebody shared the other day. It was something I would never have listened to. It was really good.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome that you've been able to teach yourself all of these skills. I think once you get into that mentality of being a self learner, it's amazing how much stuff that you once thought impossible that you can now accomplish.
Yes, agreed. And you were just telling me yourself, Kevin, about how you're now teaching yourself bass. You talk to people, especially like if you just play a show or you talk to somebody in a different department and they ask you for help about something with IT or coding at work. And they seem to have this mentality of, oh, I could never, or that's so far away from me. I've like put that in a separate, but really it's just time and practice. And, I've always had this like aversion when people tell me that I'm tone deaf. I could never sing. I don't know. I don't have any evidence, but I just feel like that's not real. I feel like humans are naturally musical. And when you catch people when they're not really paying attention, like they kind of are singing it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like something I experienced like when I was coding. Obviously, when you first start, there's a lot of confusion, and sometimes you might feel like you want to quit. But how did you personally persevere until you got good to a point to where you're like, okay, I'm starting to get this. I think I can get a job with this.
With code, that's an interesting question. With coding, I think because I had this, it's a perverse way to say this. I had the luxury of all of that time because I was recovering. So, like for example, the very first thing that it asks you to do is just to build a single page web application that doesn't really do much. It just exists, and basic CSS to just put things in a grid. And I chose to do it on Thales, the very first Western philosopher we have on record. He thought everything was water, and he fell into a well because he was looking at the sky. All these anecdotes that we have about him. But once I saw that exist, it kind of just kicked everything in. And as far as getting a job in it, I never knew where I hit any kind of like threshold or watershed moment of now I feel like I could be employed by this. I just knew once again I had fallen in love with something. It had to do with languages again. Surprise, surprise. And this had to be what ended up providing for me. It was a very unique situation. I don't think it was. I don't think it's something that's extremely comparable or can be used as an anecdote for most situations where someone is either going to have a career change based on their own free will, or I want to change in my life, or what. I was kind of just like literally knocked off my bike onto the asphalt. You have to
You were kind
change.
of like
Yeah.
thrown in, like literally
Yeah.
thrown into, okay, great. Now I can't play my instruments. I can't do the job that I was just doing.
Yes.
Now what? And I mean,
Yes.
that's got to be really scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. A lot of the initial was shock. So, for example, the next day after the accident, I got back on the subway and went to my job because I was still in so much shock that none of the pain was happening yet. But by the calmness and the tranquility of the subway ride to the job, things started happening. My body started processing. So I got off the subway and I had to break off a piece of a tree and use it as like a cane to limp into my job in uniform. And they were like, what are you doing here, man? Go to the hospital. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go.
Okay.
So like it began that way and then slowly got scary. The realness of it slowly set in over days and weeks and affect things I couldn't do anymore. I've always been an athlete, and that was also taken away from me. And as much as I live in my head, I think there's a real happiness that you can find from jobs that involve physical labor. So I've done demolition, construction, Amazon delivery, worked in restaurants and bars, like all kinds of weird physical joy. My very first thing I ever did was a volunteer work at the Staten Island Zoo. I was literally just shoveling poop from animals. But when when you
Yeah.
exhaust your body throughout the day, not only do you have time to like be in your head peacefully, but at the end of the day, you pass out, you sleep well.
Yeah.
I've always said to people that have trouble sleeping, if you exhaust your body throughout the day, your mind can't keep you up at night.
You will knock out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
You
mind
will
will lose that
literally
battle.
just
Right.
knock out.
Exactly. So it's tricky because now that I have the desk job and the thing you want to get,
Right.
you get restless mentally. And your body doesn't do anything. So I have to be very careful about like diet and just being sedentary in general. It's been a very strange. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to actively pursue exercise, or else you just end up
Yes.
blowing up and having all these health issues.
Oh yes.
Like just sitting and staring at the screen all day can get so comfortable. Like, okay, after work, now you're going home watching TV. That in your whole day you're just sitting and staring at a screen.
And even if I'm learning new songs or working on a recording or a video project for a live show that I'm still sitting in front of a computer. So even these things
Right.
that feel active, you got to be careful. But luckily I still this doesn't seem real, but the bicycle that I was on when I was hit in Brooklyn is in my living room right now in perfect shape, works better than ever. Like it doesn't have a scratch on it. And the way that the accident happened, it got hit by the cab and I didn't. Because I jumped up off the bike and then
Wow.
I hit the asphalt, and that's wrong because he fled the scene. So all my injuries came from that and chasing after him. But the bike
Wow.
literally got spat out from beneath the cab, and it's fine. So I still ride that bike. So that's one of the ways that I get exercise. I love frisbee. I try and do jump rope when I can. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky.
No,
You gotta,
I can tell just from our conversation so far that you're kind of like a renaissance man. You do all things, you do
yeah,
this, you do that, you do music, you do programming, et cetera, et cetera. How do how do you find the joy, or how do you find focus in all of these things that you're doing? Because you're jumping around from guitar to vocals to drums to
yeah.
keyboard, then back to programming, then back to guitar. Like, how do you, you know what I mean? Like, how do you sort through that mentally, physically? How do you find the balance? That's what I'm trying to get at. How
The
do you find the
balance.
balance? The balance.
Well, until you said that word, I had a really good answer. The balance is the tricky part. That is the tricky part. I think you just what I was ready to answer you before you said balance is that you just are in what you're in currently. So one of the things I studied in philosophy is Zen Buddhism, and one of their big things that they say is just 100% of what you're doing, be in it completely. So I've said that poorly, but one of the examples is if you're with your girlfriend, you're 100% boyfriend mind. If you're eating food, you're 100%, animal, whatever example you want to use. If you're making music, you're 100% musician mind. So if you're doing, let's say, drums, for example, but also having these fleeting temptation thoughts of, I really got to get the programming done, or I haven't made dinner yet, or don't I have to go shopping? You're not doing any of the things. You're not drumming. You're not shopping. You're not writing code. You know what I mean? So it's very easy to just say those words, but it's actually tricky to do it. But that's kind of how I do it. As far as balance, because I couldn't play the instruments for 5-6 years, I have, now that I can again, and 2024 was me really getting back on stage and in a band again, and being
Yeah.
where I want to be.
Getting back out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I feel like I have this innate itch to make up for all that time. I wasn't on stage. I wasn't recording. I wasn't writing. I wasn't being seen. Like all the momentum musically that I had built from college to that point. I was in a band in college. We wrote and produced 2 original albums. We, was doing a lot, like 400 shows, and
Oh, wow. Were
all that got
you,
killed. Yes,
did you
sorry.
do like touring, or,
Touring isn't the right word. We were out in Binghamton at the school, and we played many, many shows at different events, fundraisers, all that stuff. We would just plug in outside to the dining hall and play for 4 hours for people on
oh,
campus.
wow.
But we'd also go down to New York City. We would play at Crash Mansion, at Delancey, at Bowery Poetry Club, and from Binghamton, we'd make that trip and go back.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was we all knew it was the main thing we wanted. And then all that momentum got shut down instantly.
That's
So
crazy.
now I feel like I gotta get all that back.
You got
So
to get
I
it all
am in
out,
a
right?
lot of projects right now. I have my solo shows that I do. I'm in like 2 or 3 other bands separately than that. I have like 5 set lists going around in my head at all times. So once you said balance, like I have a much less good answer for you with balance. It is the goal, and I do still want to be striving toward balance, especially now. This year, my main focus is to bring originals back on stage again. I didn't do that at all last year, and I've already played a few shows where I have, so that's really good. I'll keep that going. But it's tricky, especially with that feeling of I have all this time to make up for. A balance, it has to stay more top of mind than I've been letting it for the past half a year, something like that.
Right. Yeah. And also, you know, the word that comes to mind is focus, you know,
Right.
with like when I think about drums, when I think about teaching drums, you know, I'll often share with my students, hey, you know, I'm going to show you something and I don't want you to just cookie cutter play it back to me. I want you to put your own spin on it,
Yep.
put your own feel to that pattern that I just showed you. You know, maybe I show you a crossover pattern on the snare drum and the floor tom. But then I say, hey, mix it up. And then you do the crossover, same pattern, but now you're doing on the cymbals.
Yep.
You know, so it's things
Yep.
like that, like just like small tweaks,
Yeah.
small changes in the approach really gets your creativity going. Cause then you realize, oh, wow, like I can take anything and make it my own. So I'm
Yes.
always challenging my students to take things I show them, don't just play it back in, you know, with their feel. And I think that to me is extremely important in music and teaching.
Yeah, I mean, while you were saying that, I could even think of doing that with coding. Or Kevin, you're learning bass. Like, I don't know if you guys are into Dave Matthews Band at all, but their drummer Carter Beaufort is
Oh,
elite.
he's great. He's
Yeah,
great.
and one of the
Yeah.
things I've learned from watching him and little educational videos he used to make was, and I've kind of extrapolated this into just a philosophy of life in general, not just a musical instruction, but the idea of just hitting, like on the hi hat, for example, you're hitting every single whatever 16th note, and then every now and then, instead of hitting the cymbal, you just hit your leg instead. So what comes out of that is, but you're not ever not hitting something. And you know what I mean? Your approach is constant attack.
Right.
But the sound that comes out of that is not the same. So the same thing when you're playing bass, you could, be coming at certain things, but then mute some of them or ghost notes or whatever it is. And then the same thing with focusing, just in general. And let's say you're writing code or you're taking the crossover pattern from the floor tom and the snare over to the cymbals. You can take the element of the approach that you want to be tweaking or trying something out with and still mentally be in constant attack, but just pull some of it out in a way that everyone else experiencing what you're doing will receive a different message or a different twist on it or a different take when you haven't actually, in reality and internally, you haven't changed that much of what you're doing. So I don't know if that analogy came through as I wanted it to, but that's something that I've tried to kind of keep with me with as far as keeping focus on things and keeping it different for you so that you can keep pushing through. Like you asked me earlier, Kevin, how I got through the initial barrier of, I feel like the imposter syndrome, basically, with coding, which is a huge thing, I think in a lot of fields. I feel like I'm not that good at this. How will I know when I feel good at this? For me, learning guitar when I'm 16, whatever it is, the physical pain of like ripping your skin up and wanting to wear batting gloves,
Yeah.
while playing guitar,
Right.
that was a huge lesson. And being able to push through that, I want this so bad that I'm gonna defeat this. Like, this does hurt. I'm not gonna ignore this or lie to myself or anything. But my want for this is bigger than this detraction is. So that's the same thing with coding. Once I kind of learned that lesson from the guitar, and there's a really good book that I can either link in or something, but it's just called Zen of Guitar, by an author called Philip Pseudo or Philip something. And he basically, it's like a dojo. He walks you through learning guitar as if it's a dojo and introduces Eastern philosophy through it. But that's kind of the lesson that I did is when I was teaching myself coding, like, this is going to hurt and I'm going to feel lost and my fingers are going to bleed. But I'm just going to keep going because I know what it's like to get better at something. I know what it's like to break through that initial, all of the doubts and all the stuff that you hear yourself lie about, basically, because once you have enough evidence, you know that it is lies. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
when I think back to, I started teaching, so I started playing drums at 14,
Yeah.
started teaching at 18, but I
Wow.
didn't start teaching by, it wasn't my own willpower. It was the drum teacher I had at the time. He had a student that could no longer come into his studio. And so the kid wanted, someone who could make a house call, and my
Hmm.
drum teacher didn't do house calls at the time, at least. So he said, hey, I've got this kid. He's, 12, 13 years old. I've been teaching him for, 2 years or whatever. I can't teach him anymore. Do you want to take over the student? And at first I was like, well, I don't know. I'm only 18 and
Yeah.
I've only been playing for 4 years. And, do I have enough knowledge of theory and everything to like teach this kid? But, he was like, no, just try it, just give it a shot. So he really encouraged me to take on this student, and it went great. It
That's
was it
awesome.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I was far, far ahead of where I thought I had to be.
Mm.
You don't to teach, it's really just about connection. You need to make that connection with the student.
Yep.
So it's like you're talking about philosophy. I think it is more philosophical than, just beating something with a hammer.
Yeah.
Like you're really using finesse. You're really using intuition and syncopation and all of these different things that come about in music. You can see them play out when you're teaching. So that was my first student at 18, and I've been teaching since.
Wow. That's really cool. I've found it difficult to kind of stretch. Talking about diversifying and being Renaissance. That's something that kind of just keeps extinguishing a flame every time I try and ignite one. As far as teaching musical instruments to people, whether I go through some kind of digital platform and say like I am now an available teacher, or even just placing flyers in the mailboxes of all my neighbors, or spreading word of mouth. I can't seem to make that happen for some reason. But that's okay. I wouldn't have time to do it right now. But I think it would be cool to do. I think spreading that would, I've always had like, I've never really had any really, really like good, like the instruments that you look at in the music stores and you're like that one day. I've never really had one of those, but I have had these like lower levels of it's a guitar, it works. At any time that I have a cousin or a friend of a friend, and they're like, I've always kind of wanted to play. Like I just give it to them. It's just as much as like I'm like, just take this. Here's a case. Here's everything. We gave it to my cousin when she went away to college. And who knows? Maybe people take it up. Maybe they won't. I've always tried to kind of infect people with music the way that my dad did for me. Like I was telling you guys before, if we were going to baseball practice or school or whatever, a song would come on the radio, and he would say like, "Come on, you know this voice. Who is this? Who's singing this?" And I'm like,
Right.
I think it's Aerosmith. Is it Steven Tyler?" Like, yeah, it's Steven Tyler. And that excitement and that like it just completely enveloped me, and I was like, I want to be able to do that. I was always singing. I don't have memories of being alive and not singing. I'm jumping up and down on my parents' bed at 5 years old singing "Sweet Emotion" by Aerosmith, or stuff that I should not have been knowing the words to at that age.
Right.
But the instrumentation piece was big. I think I got like one of the Casio keyboards when I was probably 15, and I was sitting under the stairs at night and just trying to figure out Fur Elise, and but then that Christmas, the girlfriend I was dating at the time, her and her mom gave me my first acoustic guitar that Christmas. Her older brother was a musician. And when they did, my dad and I just went to, I think, their house. We just exchanged gifts and went back to our families. And even in that quick interaction, when the guitar was handed to me, I just immediately started crying. I knew, I like felt my life redirecting. Because I
Wow.
had always been an athlete. It was always just baseball, 100%, nothing but baseball. And even as a kid, you talking about being a Renaissance person, we played the little community I grew up in, it was a bunch of young kids my age. We played everything: baseball, hockey on the street, roller skate hockey,
Oh yeah.
basketball, football, for everything. They simulated wrestling stuff, Um,
Kickball,
yeah, exactly. And a handball. I played handball,
dodgeball.
so much handball. Oh my god. Um, so yeah, but baseball was the only thing that I did like in organized teams and was super good at and wanted to keep doing into college.
That's
Um,
awesome.
And again, even then, an injury redirected my life and on the baseball field. And that Christmas, I got the guitar. I just never turned around.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think that's the important point is sometimes what you may look at as a bad situation is eventually the impetus to move you to where you need to go. It forces you to adapt into a new situation, and now you have a whole new skill set.
If you do that, because I got a lot
Yeah.
of that on when the accident happened to me, I got a lot of "you're so lucky." What?
Really?
So people have and I I get it. People have trouble knowing how to handle really really bad situations and what to say. But I agree with you that when really even not necessarily bad, but really big things happen to you, it can be this doorway if you do it, if you do the work and push through it. Well, if it's a bad thing and you push through it and come out the other side and kind of chrysalis and like a butterfly and all that stuff. But it can also just end all that momentum that I was talking about having lost. That could just stay that way, and it isn't something you did wrong or you're not strong enough or what. Like that can just happen. So it's tricky. It can't. You're right. It can be this impetus, but it's something that you have to do. It's work that you have to make happen and face, because otherwise, you're the other story.
Oh
Very
yeah,
easily.
I definitely agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
what made you like intentionally choose to pivot versus just mulling and staying sad? Because like even with during unemployment, a lot of people they just stay down and out. They feel sad and they
Yeah.
never really recover. So how do
It's
you?
extremely difficult. And that's a situation specifically with this recent string, the post-COVID tech layoffs where companies were just jettisoning people, like hundreds of thousands of really,
Hundreds
really.
of thousands of jobs lost.
Yes,
Yeah.
and now you have a flooded market with senior level people trying to get into entry mid-level jobs. Mid-level entry people
Crazy.
can't get anything at all. It's so and you're
It's
seeing
crazy.
stories of, I've been out of work 18 months. I'm a single mom. I got, mouths to feed. Unemployment ran out, a year and a half. Like, oh my God. So,
Like
and it's so much.
GoFundMes and stuff
Yes,
like that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had to do GoFundMe after the accident.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I was I was in Brooklyn at the time for probably like another 6-7 months. And there was no way I was going to be able to keep. I wasn't in my own apartment. I was sharing an apartment with multiple people, but even my own contribution to that apartment, there's no way I was going to be able to keep making that rent. So I think like 7 whatever months, I moved up to the Hudson Valley in New York. I had a friend of mine that was doing a music therapy graduate program at one of the SUNY schools. If you're watching this, not from New York, that's the State University of New York kind of network of colleges. And I just knew it was somebody that was, a relationship close to me and then would be geographically close to me. If anything went down, if I needed to go to a hospital for it, I'd have a ride, I'd have somebody help me with groceries and laundry and stuff. And he's a good friend of mine. And I haven't left. I've fallen in love with being up here. This has become my new home. I've kind of planted my roots in this area and networked with a bunch of people. And this is kind of what I've made my home to be. But, yeah, so as far as how I chose to not let the unemployment hit, and kind of be a permanent thing, at that point, this is already post baseball injury redirecting me to music, post teaching myself music, post philosophy. And when I went to college, I didn't go to college and say, I want to be a philosophy major. I went in an engineering program and you had to like apply separately. And it was this really cool thing. And after about a semester or two, I just kind of said, I can do this. But just because I can do something doesn't mean I should do something. I don't think I'm going to be happy if I do this.
That's huge.
It
Yeah.
was it's probably the biggest lesson I took out of college.
That's huge.
The
Yeah.
irony is I'm now an engineer. But
Right.
but yeah, so I just left that major blind with no intention to do anything, and then took classes that seemed interesting. One of them was called Mountains and Forests: The Ethics of Dwelling. And that's where I found Emerson, Rousseau, Thoreau, and it's all these naturalist philosophers of talking about how we live in relation to nature. Discovered that philosophy was a thing at all. Never knew it was a thing. This conversation has been going on for 3,000 years. I can now be a part of it. Again, fell in love with language. And so I was like, if I'm going to spend all this money and all this time and all this energy in college, I want to study something that I love. I want to get a degree in something that I love. It's not going to help me get jobs. It's not going to help me make money, but I know I will be able to sleep at night knowing and it's made my life better. And when things like this happen, when the accident happens, or when deaths in the family happen, these huge, painful things that nobody knows how to deal with, nobody has any training with, that's where my degree serves me the best. If you want to talk about a degree serving you. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Sorry.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I was also affected by those layoffs, and it was really interesting because it's not anything that you did. It's just
Correct.
the fact that the companies are following the leader. They're following
Correct.
Elon Musk. And,
Yep.
you know, the prior to that, the market was excellent. You would have like 5 or 6 recruiters a day hitting you up with these increasingly lucrative offers, and then all of that just dried up instantly. So
yeah, and that when we grew up, that was the main thing you heard. Tech is the safe industry. There will never not be tech job. And who predicts a pandemic? But yeah, the reaction to that. So I'm now remembering what you originally asked me, Kevin. I'm sorry, but after having learned all those lessons and having pushed through all those things, by the time the layoffs hit me, I'm like Al Horford. I'm a seasoned veteran in the NBA at this, but there is no this is gonna stop me. This is gonna derail me so much that there's no. So at that point, I'm doing what I need to do on the main front, and I'm getting my resume sharp and keeping my 19 trillion frameworks of coding languages that are out there that you have to. It's unbelievable. But I'm also doing a separate job on the side, which was English transcription service for a company where I coincidentally was doing sports highlights, which was fantastic because I already knew how to spell Giannis Antetokounmpo's name. I already know, so I don't have to go because a lot of that job was based on how much time it took you to do each one. So you're listening, you're watching, and then you're typing the closed captioning, and you're submitting that to this company. So it's not a lot of money, but it's something. It's something coming in on the side while I'm doing the main job search. And that just kept not happening. So that was when I did the delivery for Amazon. I'm like, I can't not have an income. There's no too low. There's no shame. There's no, And again, because I had been sedentary, because I had been coming out of the recovery from the accident, delivering for Amazon for like probably 6 months, 7 months, I lost 40 pounds. That's so another like doing a physical job has these wonderful benefits. And I feel like I know a good amount of people that would kind of feel some kind of like, I don't know, like not everybody's okay with doing something that is just your body, and they have this mental, like people spend a lot of money on things from a place that has the name because it has the name. It's not better. It's not made better. It's not from better materials. They just know that the reputation is worth more money. So I should do that. And I think it goes the other way too. I shouldn't do that. We tell kids that you don't want to be a garbage man. Meanwhile, they're like unions and pensions.
Oh, they're making money.
Yeah. So, and actually while I was doing that, the UPS strike and contract happened. So that was wild to watch. But I'm happy for them because they definitely need it.
Yeah, I actually had to drive Uber Eats when I was laid off.
Exactly.
Exactly. Initially, you're kind of like, oh, but then you just get over it and you actually realize this is actually a lot of fun. Like there's a certain freedom there doing something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I ended up, you talk about Uber Eats. I ended up delivering food for a Chinese place, like a Chinese fusion place. And I did that for, I don't know, not too long, maybe like 4 months. But it made me realize that like there's so many people that look down upon delivery drivers and Amazon workers and FedEx and all that. And I was just really taken back, but I was just like, wow, like you're going to judge me just because of my job and you think you know who I am. And it's like, you have no clue who I am, like what I'm capable of, but this is what I'm deciding to do with my time at this moment.
It's one of the first things we ask people. What do you do?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I've never done that. I've never understood that. And when people ask me that, I try and, I don't know if you saw the Marvel movie Shang-Chi or like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, just any of that kind of notion of Kung Fu where you just redirect the incoming blow into something gentle and beautiful. I try and do some version of that if I ever get the what do you do? And then I'm not going to not answer them. Eventually the conversation will go there and I'll get them the answer that they wanted. But just trying to push back on the notion of that being the first labeling most important thing that you know about a person. It's like,
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that because just in my travels when I was younger, I was in Europe with this one band I was in at the time, and I
Sweet.
remember talking to it might have been Germany. I remember talking to this European guy, and I was just saying, so tell me what's the main difference between a European and an American? And the guy was like, easy. He already he already had the answer before I finished the question. He said, in America, people will ask you, "What do you do?" In Europe, people will ask you, "Who are you?"
Perfect. Let's go there.
Isn't that great? Isn't that
Yes.
great?
Yes.
I was like, wow, like I was stunned by it. I was like, wow, like that's so spot on.
Yeah. And it matters so much more.
Yeah, I find it so interesting. Like in America, we're almost defined by our job titles. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm a software engineer, and we feel guilty when we're not spending time doing that. Like, oh, I'm not spending enough time outside of work reading these programming books. I'm gonna get behind. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like our life is just geared towards making money, and there's so much more to life than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I find I'm not speaking for anybody else. I have found that all the best parts of life are not that. So that's kind
Yeah.
of why I'm spread so thin. That's why I'm in so many musical projects. I'm catching up on time, and I still read philosophy. I try and spend as much time as I can with friends. I've noticed, once you're into the age of life where your friends are pairing off romantically, maybe having kids, getting married, it has just a little bit broken my heart a little bit. How easily it seems like these people that you've made these friendships with are able to kind of go into that and only do
Just
that. There's no
drop
balance.
you.
Speaking of
Yeah,
balance,
kinda drop you as a friend
yes,
and
I'm
just
I'm
go
trying to,
so
yes, yes.
yeah, I mean, and they'll just
I
be
mean, you're
like,
right.
"Oh,
You're right.
well, it's my family, I'm focusing on my family," but
Yes, which
yeah,
I
you're
get.
sit
You need to support your family.
which is fair, but then, at the same token, like, you're sitting there saying, "Well, hey, like, we've been, like, best friends for 15 years.
It's
What
tricky.
about me? I'm just getting shoved to the side all of a sudden because you met someone?"
It's tricky, and you want them to. I don't want to see my friends just be single, and if they don't want to be. Um, but yeah, I would like to strive for some kind of balance with that. And for me specifically, I have always had this. I don't even know how to describe it. Just of it, I have held my male friendships in extreme importance in my life. I've fostered them and not let them die. And even people that aren't, because the Hanlon's razor has become so important as I've become an adult. Like we have Occam's razor. Hanlon's razor is never attribute to malice what can be easily explained away by incompetence or ignorance or stupidity or whatever. Like it's so rare that someone is evil and maliciously doing something to you on purpose. It's really just like, oh, I just got busy and forgot. I was distracted. My kid got sick. And then from your perspective, it seems like this pattern of someone like, wow, they don't even like me anymore, or whatever
Right.
it is. But like again, the lies that we tell. So it's tricky. It's tricky to not take it personally, and I've just kind of relentlessly. I was talking to my sister about this recently, but I just relentlessly am willing to be the person keeping a two-way street alive one way. If it's what's needed,
Yeah.
I'm not going to let the relationship die. You're extremely important to me. This relationship is important to me. Um,
Well, that's
I know
how I
my
feel.
yeah
100%.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah
Because
Yeah, I think
friendships, like, you don't wanna just throw away something. Okay,
yeah
yeah, you met a girl, and that's great, and you're getting married, and you're gonna have a couple kids, and, yeah, that's great and all that, but, what about that bond? What about that friendship you built with that person over 10, 15, maybe
yeah.
even 20 years? I can't believe how some people are so, I don't know what the word is to say about it, just so,
It seems easy.
um like complacent with just saying, "Oh yeah, well this is my family now and I have to spend time with my family, so you're not really important anymore."
And again, it may not be from this like that. All of that may never happen for them. They
Right.
may not even realize that. You know what I mean? But the thing that I try and kind of enter into the conversation, if I even get to have that conversation, as opposed to just can I steal 91 minutes of your life every 5 months, The mental health of men is dramatically improved by maintaining their male friendships through the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s age group. So it's not even like this selfish thing that I want you to like spend less time with your family. It's for you also, because of that, because your life is now your family. You're supporting your family. You got to be there with your wife. You got to, whatever for the kids. If you have a dog, you got a house payment, whatever it is. You also need that balance. You also need time away and escape. And then even just like the healthy banter of, all the TV shows that we grew up with, like, oh, my wife's got me taking out the garbage again. Getting to say that kind of stuff with people that aren't in the same thing that a therapist can provide for you, someone outside the relationship, where you can kind of healthily vent these things as opposed to just always bottle, never say it, never. It's better for everyone. It's healthier for everyone to keep the friendships alive. But yeah, it's difficult for
Yeah,
sure.
somebody notices, like humans, we're really like tribal creatures, social creatures.
Yes,
We're meant
totally.
to be amongst each other, but
Yes.
modern society kind of has us isolated. Maybe we have our family or whatever, and then nobody else. And if something goes wrong, who can you reach out to?
Yeah. I just I just met these really cool jazz guys this weekend. These older jazz cats that were playing over by me, and I was a little bit hanging out with them and talking with them as they were setting up to play the show. But I was also kind of falling back. I wanted to hear. I wanted to try and like steal some wisdom a little bit. And the amount of times that I heard them say, like, who was the one who laid that down in Brooklyn for us? It was Jim. Oh, no, wait, Jim passed away. It was just kind of rocking me how often they would forget that they've lost someone along the way, because they're still in it and they're still in the world. But
Right.
they mentioned someone recently that they knew that he didn't pass away, but he had some kind of either coronary event or respiratory event. He was on the floor of his apartment for 36 hours before somebody found him, because of what you're saying, Kevin, that there wasn't somebody regularly checking in on him, regularly communicating, whether it's male or female, whoever it is, family, a paid,
Right.
but that's scary, man. That's scary. So,
I mean,
but
for you, when you had your accident, did you have anyone to support you, financially or emotionally?
um, yes and no. So, my whole family's from Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn. When my sister was born, we moved to Staten Island. Most of my childhood was Staten Island. By the
Oh,
time I'm
wow.
in college, a lot of when you said Suffolk County before, I was like, oh, um,
Yeah, well, I
uh,
grew up in Bridgeport.
oh, okay.
Yeah, Connecticut.
But yeah, so a lot of my family now is in the South. It was when I went to college, they all kind of moved away and got out of Staten Island as soon as possible, which is the same thing that I did, so I get it.
Yeah,
But
right.
so not a lot of people were geographically close to me, and that was the first instance of me, unfortunately, finding out a little bit about what tests certain friendships would survive. Because I'm now, like, for example, I was in a fantasy football group at the time, and I was in the group chat. I would be saying, like, I now can't come watch the games. Would it be okay if we watch the games where I am one of the weekends? No answer at all. Like I
Wow.
didn't even say it. So things like that. And I get it. We're still young at that point. I was like 20. I just came off my parents' health insurance, so,
Yeah.
26, 25. Nobody knows how to deal with this stuff until they're faced with it. But that was an instance of starting to like, oh, okay. So I had financially, not really. So the full circleness of it and getting back to the coding of it, I now work for the New York State service that provides this protection for people that were in my situation in that accident. So the
Oh,
only
wow.
income I had as far as medical bills, coverage, and things like that was a New York State law that exists to protect people in that situation. And now I work for the New York State agency that provides that to people, which is super cool.
That's
Um,
wild.
so that's how I ended up bringing coding kind of full circle to not only support myself but help provide that same protection to people if something like that were to happen to them. But yeah, it's very cool. And then the job, like I was saying earlier, Kevin, the job has also taken me from just front end developer. I live in this, I don't want to say bubble, but I live in this protected image in my head of, I found this wonderful marriage of the two sides of my brain where logic and creativity collide and create this magical dust. Where this job has asked me to like learn SQL, learn PL SQL, learn developer things, learn calling to and creating packages and tables and databases. And it really has, not against my will, but I wouldn't have asked to be so balanced in this way and expand my skill set. I would have asked to keep being a front end developer and do that more and specialize in that. But that's a situation where, like we were saying earlier, kind of an unintentional curveball came and became a doorway that I was very happy to walk through once I saw what could be happening there. So that's been exciting because all the projects that I had built to that point and on my portfolio, like I have my own website that I built as a portfolio for it's cool. When you go to my website, I wanted it to be like you walk into an office and there's a fork in the road and it's like, who are you here to see? Are you here to see me, the musician, or me, the developer? And then you pick one and that's the page that opens up. That's like the website that opens
Oh,
from there.
wow. That's awesome.
It is. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I was really happy with that. But so even including that project, nothing has ever, I've done API calls, I've done, RESTful APIs, I've worked with responsive data and things like that, but I've never directly like built pieces of backend databases and used that in dynamic web build. I now know .NET stuff. I now like so much that I wouldn't have known. And it's really exciting. It's a cool way to do something you wouldn't have intended to do, a position you wouldn't have found yourself in or asked to be in. And like you were just saying with driving Uber Eats, you find the fun, you find the benefits, you find like, oh, I would never have, okay, I can work with
Yeah.
this. So I
Right.
think that's a lot of navigating what comes up in life, because
I think that's what makes life interesting. Like
yeah,
it gives you variety
yeah,
because naturally we want to go to what we're comfortable at, where we're safe at. But life kind of shocks you out of that and forces you to do something else. And initially you might hate it, but then you look back and you're like, wow, this was actually a great thing. Like I'm a much more skilled, much more prepared person now that
yes.
I went through that.
Absolutely. I was just saying to a friend recently, he sent me something that spawned this, so you won't have that context. I'm sorry. But my response to him was, comfort is stagnation. Stagnation is regression. Regression is death. So
Yeah.
I always strive for the anti of comfort at like almost at all, except for my bed. My bed is extremely comfortable. But almost at all times, if I find myself like collecting dust, I'm like, no. I gotta go learn drums now. So I think that's a lot of what leads to that.
Yeah, like that's how I am with drums. If I feel like I'm focusing too much on one area,
Right.
then I say, okay, let me switch this up. Like, let's say I'm focusing too much on pop and Latin. I might say, okay, let me switch it up to reggae and jazz. Like
Yeah.
just constantly switching it up, constantly keeping yourself fresh. Because a session musician I once met in LA, he told me, this is before I was a session player. He said, look, if you want to be a session musician, you got to be able to play it all.
Yeah.
So he said the way to do that, or like at least he was a guitarist. His
Okay.
method for doing that was to play different covers every day of varying genres. So
Smart.
like I'm saying, Latin, pop,
Yeah.
reggae, jazz, punk, metal,
Yeah.
just play all these different styles in a row. And after a while, you just realize, oh, okay, I can play this Johnny Cash song without really thinking too much about it. I can play this shuffle, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's really important.
Agreed. I don't know if you're familiar with. I'm going to pronounce his last name incorrectly. Grayson Necrutman is a drummer on. I found him on social media on Instagram, but he now tours. I believe the band is Sepultura. But he
Oh,
does that.
wow.
He'll film himself doing like Buddy Rich for 5 minutes, and then straight to thrash metal, and then straight to country, and then like he is. It's unbelievable watching him. He's incredible. And I know John Stamos has kind of like not taking him under his wing, but like giving him a little wind beneath his wings a little bit. Because I didn't know this until a year or two ago, but John Stamos is a drummer, like a legit drummer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, who knew? But
Yeah.
so yeah, he kind of helped him, like he scrubbed some of his fame off onto so he get some lift off, and now he's touring with that band. I might have gotten the name of that band wrong, but yeah, definitely try and look up Grayson Equipment. He's incredible.
So yeah, like we kind of mentioned the declining social nature of humans, especially like
Yeah.
us men. Like typically we work, go home, and maybe play some games. And now the day's gone, we're not making any new connections. But
Yeah.
I think that's something I want to actually do is be more intentional about getting out, forming those friendships. Like you mentioned, if you want to learn something, you have to just dive in and do it and be willing to suffer what comes with it. And me and Brian, we often talk about like how back in the day you ride around, you see kids playing,
Yep.
everybody was outside. There's a certain richness to that no longer exists now that we're in this digital age. Like you can't really remember talking in the chat room, but you can remember playing football outside with your friends. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
so
and to be, I just noticed this the other day, and I kind of like used it as an example to counter my desire to see things that way. Like even on my street where I live, there are kids riding around on their bikes. Like it's still, it's not nowhere, but I agree, it's not like it was, and that's fine. They're gonna find their own new version of that. Like we have the memes of the way you knew where everybody was all the turned down bikes on the lawn, and you just ran in that house and got a sandwich. Um, and there'll be some new version of that. I think it's the like the pendulum overswing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like right now everything is so digital and so I've even seen kids in like Gen Z and Gen Alpha online complaining about how their own generation is not outgoing and active enough, and they're afraid to be seen as not polished and Instagram, whatever. So I think there's gonna be just a natural balancing of that pendulum, and there will be more physical activity, more outdoors, more being
Yeah.
seen, a balancing of it. Like you'll still have it, you'll still
Right.
be streaming Instagram live, but you'll also be playing
Right.
soccer in a field with your friends while
Yeah,
whatever it looks like.
I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia for the 90s.
Of
A
course,
lot of these younger kids are
every
like, "Oh,
generation loves their
wow."
childhood. Yeah,
Yeah, right,
yeah.
exactly. But I feel like a lot of the younger kids are looking at the 90s like, "Oh, wow,
Mm,
okay, you didn't have cell phones.
gotcha.
You didn't really have high-speed internet.
Yeah,
What did you do? What was life like?" And you can, tell those kids, "Look, it was actually a lot more rich."
yeah,
You could just go outside, play kickball. You go down a couple blocks, everyone's playing basketball.
yeah.
Couple more blocks down, they're playing with marbles and dominoes.
I
Like
still have my marbles.
that's what I'm saying. So it's like, back at me and Kevin have talked about this a couple times, but yeah, back in our day, I mean, we're not that old. I'm
Yeah,
38. Kevin, you're what, 40?
yeah, 40.
Yeah. So it's like, but back in our day, you would be in the summer, you'd be outside until it got dark.
the entire day. Yes,
That's the entire day.
the
You'd be
entire day.
outside.
Yeah,
And now the entire day, kids are inside on tablets.
yeah.
So it's a huge, like you said, pendulum. It's a huge pendulum swing.
One thing that I will say that I always try and remind myself when I think about the internet being what it is, there is something that we did not have as kids. We have now is the mostly unrestricted access to truth, and it's not as much of a sting in America, but in like second and third world countries, if you have a friend of a friend who knows where a certain cell tower is, and you can go over and steal a few bars of Wi-Fi and look up what you're being told by all the adults in your entire life is a certain thing is actually not. That's a lot. That goes a very long way in the positive column of the internet for me. As far as like the disillusionment and the lying to children, I just feel like it's always gone on. I mean, but that's something that the internet can at least fight back a little bit, which I think is pretty damn good. And another thing, Kevin, you're talking about putting effort into finding and creating these friendships and relationships. That's something that the internet can do for us that we wouldn't have had then. If you like, there was a period, I think like post-pubescent for me, where there like some drama went down in my community that I grew up in, and I wasn't able, like I was persona non grata for like 3 years. And that's it. I don't know anyone else. There is no one else. Whatever the radius of how far I can ride a bicycle is the whole world. And if I'm not cool with these people now, there are no other people. So things like that, the internet also defeats that. It allows you to connect with people that are like-minded to you 5,000 miles away from you that you would never have interacted with, and it makes you feel less alone. And it made, you could find allies that you didn't know you had. So that would be something that I would recommend if you're looking to do that. I know by me, there is a gaming cafe. So it's like, coffee and biscuits and crepes or whatever. But the entire side wall of the place is like 500 board games. And they
Oh,
have a
wow.
Discord server that is extremely active, and people get together and create little D&D campaigns. We need a fifth on Wednesday. Does anybody want to come down? So you just go meet people and make friends. You already have something in common. You're already having great coffee, and there's no alcohol in the place. So there's not going to be anything weird on how, but it's
Yeah,
adults.
right.
It's adults. So like
Right,
things
right.
like that, I'm sure exist. Meetup.com or whatever the name of that website is. The internet is a way to make connections you would not otherwise have made. And in general, I think just trying to find these little positive, shining things that the internet can do really helps, because the other column is, flooded, So we got
Yeah.
to
I
do
mean,
a little
and
bit of work.
look at this. Like, we're talking to you
Exactly.
tonight
Exactly.
because of a social network, LinkedIn.
Right.
We
Right.
we do most of our marketing on LinkedIn. So it's just really interesting to see how things play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, you have to utilize the tool. You can't let the tool use you. Like if you just let the digital world steer the ship, you're going to be isolated and lonely. But if, like you mentioned, you use like meetup.com or whatever, or
Yeah.
whatever it is to find events, then, you can find what you're looking for.
Even Facebook, as much as I, good God, Facebook. But even Facebook, there will be your community, your little geographic region. There'll be either a community page or, people that like Frisbee in this zip code, whatever it is. There will be ways that you can kind of make friends, and then it's on you to maintain them, because life keeps happening to people. And yeah.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're at the top of the hour, man. Did you want to
Okay.
leave our audience with any closing thoughts?
I'll give you a Dave Matthews quote: "Fill up your head, fill up your heart. Don't waste time trying to be something you're not." And my last name, as you can see here, is Leary. So all of the ways to find me, if you're interested, on social media, YouTube, whatever, my website is the spelling of my name, lyricist, like someone who writes poetry. So it's LEARICIST. So lyricist.com is my website. And then The Lyricist is Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. And that'll be music, that'll be coding projects that you can see with things that I've built, examples of what I can build. But yeah, come say hi. Tell me that, my shirt looks stupid, or whatever. Like, just communication for the sake of communication.
Awesome. Sorry, I got disconnected
Oh, you're
there.
good. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I forget exactly my train of thought, but I think what I would like to leave our listeners with tonight is that focus.
Yeah,
Focus is so important. I don't care what you're doing. I don't
yeah,
care if you're a garbage man, someone who plays pool, someone who's playing with marbles outside on the street, playing
yeah,
with chalk. Focus is the main thing, because if you could focus on something, then you can accomplish pretty much anything.
yeah.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure having you on. Anytime
Hey,
you
it
want
was
to
great to meet you
come
guys.
back
Thanks.
on, let us know and we'll set it up.
All right, excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on tonight, Michael.
Thank you. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, we like it.